in English today, and we're really happy that he is here with us. And please give a warm welcome to Ben Hammersley. Yeah, that's you.
Good afternoon. Hello. I can't see anybody, so you have to make more noise. Good morning. Good afternoon. Thank you very. Thank you. Thank you. As has just been said, my name is Ben Hammersley. I'm a futurist mostly, so my job is to live 6 months in the future and then come back here and tell you all about it. It's a very difficult job, and the reason it's a difficult job is because of something that happened in 1964. If you imagine a summer afternoon in 1964 in Northern California, everybody has much longer hair, shirts with flowers on, flowers in their hair, probably quite a considerable amount of weed. And an engineer is sat at a table, and that engineer is looking at the sales brochures for their latest products. That engineer was a man called Gordon Moore, and he was the co-founder of Intel. And in the summer of 1964, he looked at the things that Intel were making, and he realized there was something very interesting. That roughly every year, for the same amount of money, he and his team could fit twice as many components onto a microchip. And so that summer, he wrote this into a magazine article which was published in North America. And people basically ignored him. They read the article, but it was just another thing in another magazine. Nobody really cared. But 10 years later, they looked at it again, and they realized that what he had found in 1964, that every year, for the same amount of money, they could fit twice as many components onto a microchip, was still true. It was true in 1974, it was true in 1984, in 94, in 2004, in 2014. It's true today. We think it will continue to be true for at least another 10 years. Of course, everybody in this room knows what I'm talking about. This is the idea called Moore's Law. They named it after him. That roughly every year, for the same amount of money, computing power will double. Or, for the same amount of computing power, the price will halve. Now, this is both the thing that everybody in this room has lived under our entire lives. We are very used to it. You know, it's the thing that every September means that Tim Cook of Apple can stand on a stage like this and make the phone in your pocket shit. You know, in August, the iPhone X, this will still be an amazing phone. But in September, when they've announced the iPhone 11, this will be terrible. We know this. This is what happens every year. It's perfectly normal. But at the same time, it's very strange. This is the first time in human history, in all of human history, that our tools, the things we use to do our work, get twice as good every year. We've never had this situation before. You know, in the old days, when we had horses and swords, the horses and swords wouldn't get twice as good every year. You know, the sword wouldn't get twice as pointy every year. The horse wouldn't get twice as fast every year. Now, why is this? Well, the reason is because we use digital tools to make the next generation of digital tools. You don't use a sword to make another sword. You use a horse to make another horse. That's true, but that's really as far as it goes. They stopped getting any better after a while. And so whilst we all here understand this doubling and doubling of capability that we get every year, humanity as a whole finds it very difficult. Because whilst we're used to it, the institutions, the governments, the organizations, the culture that the human race lives with evolves on a much more slow basis. And we've discovered another rule. Because whilst Moore's law talks about this doubling every year, we've realized that after 10 years, there are enough of those doublings to create a whole new type of computing. Roughly every 10 years, technology has improved so much that we invent a whole new platform. 10 years ago, it was the smartphone. 10 years before that, it was the World Wide Web. 10 years before that, it was very good computer graphics for the first time. 10 years before that, it was the personal computer and the spreadsheet, and so on and so on. Every 10 years, we invent a whole new platform. So right now, we're looking at the birth of a new technology. We're looking at the birth of a new platform that has been born from this doubling and doubling of capability that we have every year. And today, in 2018, the platform that we're talking about is artificial intelligence, is AI. If you go outside, not now, wait about half an hour, but if you go outside, you'll see that pretty much every stand outside mentions AI. If you go out into the street and you buy a newspaper or a magazine, pretty much every newspaper or magazine this year has spoken about artificial intelligence. Every developer conference, from Facebook to Microsoft to Oracle, everybody is talking about artificial intelligence. This year is the year that AI has become a usable platform. And every time we get one of these new 10-year platforms, it creates enormous trouble. Because like I said, technology can increase in power and capability. It can double every year. But our institutions, society, our culture cannot. And so we always have this tension between how fast our technology improves and how fast we can change the way we think to match it. So we're learning right now. We're learning about how to use artificial intelligence. If you go outside again and you speak to the people who are selling it, you'll find that one thing we need, for example, is enormous data sets. This is why Google and Facebook are the world leaders in AI, because they have the biggest data sets, the largest amount of training data. The bigger the training data, the better the artificial intelligence. And so we're realizing that the most valuable thing that we could do today is gather as much data as possible, to absorb as much data, to monitor as many things as we can, to record as much as possible from our customers, from our users, in order to have that in a storage somewhere so that we can use it to train the AIs that we know we're going to build over the next 10 years. This is what we're building today. Meanwhile, though, outside of this room, outside of these sorts of conferences, the rest of the world is watching. And they're looking at the conversations that we're having, they're looking at the technologies we're building, they're looking at the data we're collecting, and they're starting to freak out. They're starting to get incredibly worried. I'm sure, if you're like me, for the past 2 weeks, your inbox has been filled with email after email after email from everybody you've ever done business with or every mailing list you've ever signed on to, asking you to opt in to something because of GDPR. Every business newspaper, every business magazine is talking about this GDPR regulation that's come about because the normal people, the non-technology people outside of this room have realized what it is that we're building. We've also realized, society has also realized that as we're building new technologies, they're changing the way that people think. They're changing the way that society works. 30 years ago, if you made a new technology and you put it into the shops, it was just a technology that was in the shops. It was just a toy. But today, the new technologies that we use, the new technologies that you people are developing, are so deeply entwined with everybody's daily lives that you are, in many ways, not building technology, you are building culture. You are changing your society. And so, policymakers, politicians, journalists, normal people outside this industry are watching what you're doing and they're realizing these changes are happening. And they're realizing that these changes are much more intimate than we've ever believed before. The things that you are coding, the things that you are talking about at this conference today are deeply, deeply entwined with society as a whole. You are changing people. You're changing the way that people think. In fact, some of you are working on technologies today which are making people into robots. You don't believe me? Well, let me give you an example. There have been 4 major medical studies about mobile phones, about smartphones. All of them have found the same thing. The last one was done at Harvard, so it was pretty good. And what they found was that there's a small part of the back of your brain which is constantly thinking about your phone. It's a voice in the back of your head which is constantly saying, is it ringing? Is it ringing? Is it ringing? Is it ringing? Should I check Twitter? Is it ringing? Has somebody sent me an email? Oh God, should I check it? Should I look at my phone? Can I look at my phone? Can I look at my phone? I have to look at my phone. I have to look at my phone. Is it ringing? Is it ringing? Is it ringing? Is it ringing? And every so often, because your brain is made of meat and is kind of rubbish, every so often, your brain will say, it's ringing, it's ringing, it's ringing. And you'll feel the phone vibrating in your pocket, even when it isn't. This is called phantom vibration syndrome. It's a genuine medical condition. Half of you in this room have it. You people. You guys are fine. A quarter of you, so all of the people in the front few rows, you will have felt your phone vibrate in your pocket even when you are holding it in your hand. Because the technologies we're creating are so important to us, so intimate to us, so deeply needed, that we are never more than a meter away from our device at any time. I mean, this is true, right? You know, it's either in your pocket, or it's on your desk, it's on the table by the side of your bed. When you're in the shower, you probably shower like this, right? FaceTime. Hi, Mum. This is never more than a meter away from you. And so, because of that, and because you've had one of these things for so many years, it's changed your brain. It's changed the way you think about things. These are incredibly intimate, incredibly important. And so, whilst for us technologists, this is perfectly normal. For the normal people outside, this is freaking them out. This is deeply terrifying. And this is for a platform, for a technology which is 10 years old. And like I say, every 10 years we invent a whole new platform. And this year, it's artificial intelligence. And we're making all sorts of interesting claims about these artificial intelligences. Outside, again, if you go and speak to the people who are selling them, they'll say things like, these optimize your marketing, enable more customer conversion, and so on and so on. And for everybody in this room, that sounds amazing. But if you go out onto the street and you pull in a normal person and you put them in front of it and you say, what does this mean? It means that the magical computer will tell them what to do. And that is a terrifying thought. So we are facing a huge problem. For the next 10 years, the things that you are making are going to be terrifying to the rest of the world. You are no longer going to be making cool things. You are no longer part of the internet revolution. You are no longer the cool programmers with the hoodies, or the cool entrepreneurs, or anything like that. You are no longer hipsters. Congratulations. You are now very scary people. If the technology does what we say the technology does, if we are correct about our predictions about this technology, if the sales messages outside there, the ones that you have written, are true, the things that we are making are very terrifying to normal people. But at the same time, we can't not make them. I mean, it would be easy, right? It would be easy for us to say, okay, Ben, I get it, right? I get it. AI is really scary, and and for us to make the AI work, we're going to have to learn everything there is to know about all of our customers, and then if it does work, the technology will predict what people are going to do, and it'll make them buy things, and once the politicians hear about this, they're going to freak out, and then I won't be able to go home for Christmas, because when my aunt asks me what I do for a living, that I'm going to have to say I make AI, e-commerce products, and they're going to say, and so we could stop. But of course we can't stop, because these are the things that we do. This is what we make. And if we don't make it, somebody else, somewhere else in the world will make it. The global pressure that we're under economically to make these things won't ever cease. So we're kind of stuck. So what do we do? Well, I think it leaves us with two tasks, two things we have to fully understand for the next 10 years. The two things about artificial intelligence which are the most important. The first one is we have to learn how to innovate properly. And the second is we have to learn to talk about it. So let's talk about that. How do we innovate properly? Well, the first thing we have to understand is that when we're talking about the future, the vast majority of organizations, the vast majority of companies, the vast majority of people are unable to think about the future because they themselves are not living in the present day. We're talking about amazing miracle technologies like AI, but we're talking about them in the ruins of an old industry. This isn't downtown Tokyo or San Francisco. This is semi-rural Germany. So if I go outside, I'm not going to see enormous amounts of wearables and Oculuses and artificial intelligences and exoskeletons and electric scooters and all of that sort of thing. In fact, the vast majority of people don't live in 2018. The vast majority of people live in 2002. Some of you might even work for people who have their emails printed out for them. That means whilst you are working in 2018, your boss is working in 1996. Some of you may work in an office which has a fax machine. Presumably so you can send yourself faxes, I don't know. So for us to truly innovate, we first have to bring ourselves up to the present day. Only when we've brought ourselves up to the present day can we possibly think about the future. And there's a technique I want to teach you about how to do that. A technique that you can use on a daily basis to bring yourself and your companies up to the present day so that you can think more clearly about the future. And it's a technique that you can not only use at work, but you can take home and teach all of your relatives and friends as well. It's called constant legacy-free reinvention. Here's how it works. Every few months, I want you to choose a day. It doesn't matter what day, it can be next Monday. But every few months, choose a day. And from the moment you wake up in the morning to the moment you go to bed, pay attention to everything that you are doing. From when you get out of bed and brush your teeth, to send an email, to have a meeting, to write some code, to drive to one place or drive back from another. Whatever it is, think about what it is you are doing. And ask yourself, what problem am I solving when I do this? When you get out of bed in the morning and you brush your teeth, the problem you're solving is that your mouth feels terrible, right? When you send an email, the problem you're solving is you want that person to do something, and so on and so on. Think about what it is, what problem it is that you are solving when you do that action. And when you have understood what that action is, ask yourself, if I was to do this for the first time today, if I was to do this for the very first time today, and I had to use modern technology, how would I solve this problem? And if you do that, you'll find that there's lots of space within your home and within your work to make little innovations, to bring yourself closer and closer to the present day. Tiny little innovations. You'll change your toothbrush. You'll come to work in a different way. You'll send fewer emails. You'll have fewer meetings probably. You might install some new software. Whatever it is, you'll make these little innovations. Why am I asking you to do this? Well, because this is the only way that we're going to be able to come to terms with the technological changes that are happening over the next decade. by constantly, gently innovating on a daily basis. For the past few decades, we have told ourselves and we've told the public that the best way to innovate, the best way to create really good technological change is to leap 5 years at a time. But the pace of change that we have today, the radical change in our lifestyles, the radical change in society that these technologies are going to bring about, mean that that's no longer possible. It's going to be no longer acceptable to us, to our minds, for us to change 5 years at a time. So instead, we have to change very gently, day to day, improving a little thing every single day. But like I say, if you're successful at this, you're going to be incredibly terrifying to people. So actually, the most difficult part of your job is something completely new, something that you've never done before, probably. But it's something which is really your individual mission for the next 10 years. Your job is to communicate with the rest of the world. Your job is to talk about these technologies and how they work and what they do and what they don't do with as many people as possible. We're living in an incredibly delicate time for these technologies. There is a great possibility that many of the things that you see outside today, that many of the things that you are working on, will be too terrifying, will push society too fast. When you release this to the public and you ask them to trust in artificial intelligence, when you ask them to hand over all of their data, to train these things, to enable them to make better recommendations, when you do all of that stuff, the rest of society will say no. Enough. It's too weird. It's too scary. Kill it. And GDPR 2, or whatever they call it, will just close it all down. So instead, you have to model a daily innovation every day, make yourself a little bit better and better and better. But secondly, you have to communicate what it is this stuff does. You have to talk sensibly to as many people as possible about precisely how powerful these technologies are, but also about how powerful they are not. One sec.
Sorry, man. Sorry, man.
You could have bought me dinner. Look, here's the thing. We have spent the past 20 years talking about how much the internet changes the world. And we've spent the past 20 years actually changing the world. It's been amazing. I've been an internet journalist. I've been writing about technology for 20 years now. And if I think about the way the world was 20 years ago and the way the world is today, if I think about the things we can do today, not just technologically, but in our day-to-day lives, if I think about the complete transformation of life that the people in this room have created, it's genuinely amazing. Looking out across this room, all of you are far too young to understand this, right? You're too young and you're too good looking and you'll never get it. But the world is insane now because of what I can do on my phone. In the taxi, on the way from my hotel to here, 2 hours ago, I ordered dog food for my dog in Los Angeles, which is going to be delivered tomorrow when I get home. Now, that seems both incredibly normal to everybody in this room, but also like magic to anybody, any of the normal people outside. And when I come here and I speak to all of you, and when I go to all of the stands outside, when I look at the software that's being demonstrated here, when I find out all of the plans that you all have, you're all talking about using AI to do amazing things. And I want to see those transformations happen. Because I love this stuff, I live with it, and I understand how it works. So it doesn't scare me. But there comes a point with modern technology that it becomes so good, so powerful, that it is indistinguishable from magic. And that regular people, your customers, will not be able to understand how your software, how your product, how your platform does that thing. And they will start to make up stories about it. Facebook, every month, have to put out a press release that says, we do not listen to your conversations. We are not targeting advertising to you based on what you say to your friend in the pub. Because every month, somebody starts writing that story in a newspaper because that day they were having a conversation with a friend, and then an hour later they're on Facebook and they see an ad which is about that thing. Because people are looking at this incredibly complicated and powerful technology and they are confusing it with magic. And every new innovation that you are working on will get closer and closer and closer to magic. And magic, for most people, is terrifying. And when people are terrified, when people are scared, they will go to their politicians, they will go to their representatives, and they will try to have it killed. And so the most important job that you have over the next 10 years, the biggest responsibility for artificial intelligence, the one thing that you have to do other than make it, is explain it, is talk about it, is help people understand what it is that you are making and how it works. We have reached a point now in society where technology and society are the same thing. That what you make, and you specifically, all of you in this room, what you make shapes this country, shapes this region, shapes the world. And so you have to take responsibility for that now. So that is your job. That's what I want to leave you with. You have been given amazing talents to build amazing things. And with those talents and with those things that you are building, you are being given a responsibility. And your responsibility is to work with the rest of society to help the rest of society transition into the world that you are building. In the world of incredibly powerful technologies, the most important thing that you can be, the most important thing that you have to be over the next 10 years is more human. When you leave here today, think about the pace at which you are innovating. Think about the way you describe what you do to your friends and family. And think about how the conversation is evolving in Germany, in Europe, in the rest of the world about the things that you are building. And go out there and talk with everybody. Because if you don't, the world will be ruled by fear, by people scared of what you do. But if you do, if you go out there and you understand how people are relating to your technologies, then between you and them, you will build an incredibly powerful future. We have many, many problems in the world, and many of them can be solved by the technologies that you are building today. But please, go and build them with the people who are scared of you. Thank you very much.